Good morning, afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are at. Thank you so much for joining us on another fantastic day for our December 2020 Coffee and CEU event from the DBA-SIG. Before we get to our main event, and we have such a treat for everyone today, we just do have a few housekeeping items, so just bear with me. This event is being recorded, and it's going to be uploaded into our DBA page after the event. If you're here to collect CEUs, just make sure to stay in this event for its entirety. We're going to be making sure we're monitoring the attendance throughout the presentation. After the presentation, you're going to get a short survey that has some questions about the presentation. So just make sure to fill that out, and that's how we're going to be able to send you your certificate for one BACB Type 2 Learning CE. And since we are monitoring the attendance, if you can just make sure that your full name is displayed on Zoom so that we know who you are. And some people, if you're logging through your phone, please email us at disseminateaba@gmail.com with your phone number used, your full name, and your email. And do not worry, I'm going to send all of this in the chat. And so during the presentation, we would love it if you could keep your cameras on. We would love to see your faces, but no pressure at all. Don't worry about it. The chat is always open, so feel free to comment or ask any questions that you might have. And also, if you could just mute yourself during the presentation to just limit any background noise that might be going on, it'll help everyone have the best experience possible. And lastly, our DBA fundraiser for our dissemination grant is still on. All of our proceeds go toward our annual grant that helps support an individual or group to pursue their ABA dissemination dream. So if you can, help us support them. And also, what better way to enjoy your morning coffee or tea than in a mug? This is my favorite mug. That reminds you that you helped and supported your fellow ABAers. So I'll be linking our store in the chat too, so go ahead and check it out. So I think now y'all are probably tired of listening to me ramble on and on. So let's move on to why you are actually here. Today, we get the fantastic opportunity to learn from one of my personal role models, Dr. Scott Herbst. So they are all yours, Dr. Herbst.
Cool. Hey everyone, if you don't know me, well, obviously I'm Scott Herbst. I am the owner of Six Flex Training and Consulting. What we do is provide training. One of the things we do is provide training to BCBAs in the world of relational frame theory, acceptance and commitment training as it relates to leadership, communication, organizations, and some of the work we do is actually with teams around team communication, performance engagement, etc. Got my PhD at the University of Nevada, Reno. That's where I started learning RFT and ACT. Had an opportunity to run some ACT workshops while I was there. After I graduated, started running more ACT workshops. And I think that's all I'm going to say about myself right now. Gloria, is there anything else I should say about myself right now?
No, I think that's a great intro.
Okay, cool. Today we're going to talk about gossip, communication, leadership. We're going to apply ACT to communication and really look at you as a dialogical being. And I've got three intentions for today. First is that you get a sense of how deeply language impacts your view of the world, including objects, events, people, and yourself. And secondly, that you discover something about the impact gossip has in your life. I expect we all gossip. I just expect that it's something we all do. And we can define that as we say things about people who aren't around that we wouldn't say if they were around. And that's gossip. Okay.
Hey, Dr. Herbst, so
Yeah.
sorry, but it looks like our screen has some, it's blocked. We see
It's
like
blocked.
Yeah, there's 3 blocks, rectangular blocks around.
Does that make it better?
Ooh, now we have 2.
Does that make it better?
Ooh, now we have down to 1. Almost there.
Okay, I don't know what the other one is.
That's okay. It's at the top. Is it okay if we keep that there, everyone?
Oh, you know what that is? That's for some reason, because I'm sharing screen, that's the Zoom control panel. And I don't know that I can move that one. So I just moved the chat. I just moved the participants list. I don't know if I can move the control panel. Oh,
That's
wait.
okay.
Yeah, I can. Is it gone now?
Nope, still there.
It's
That's
still
okay.
there?
Everyone is saying it's not a problem. So,
Okay,
oh,
cool.
it's gone.
Cool. We did it. All right, go team. Um, and then my final intention is that you actually leave with a tool for having conversations that open up new possibilities for action and experience in groups, any group that's important to you, whether it's your family, your workplace, your team at work, your homeowners association, etc. Okay. Um, and by the way, that when you have conversations like that, that's what leadership is. Okay. And by the way, you can be a leader from anywhere, because at any time, anywhere, you can have a conversation with someone, and you can use your conversations for that last point. So, and that's the intention. Now, here's how we're going to get there. Is we're going to do a brief tutorial on relational frame theory and how language works. We're going to give you the basic facts of RFT, give you a new view of rule-governed behavior, and then we're going to get into who you are as a verbal being, all right? And being a person who I would assert is actually made of language. We're going to do that work so that we can get into a functional approach to gossip. Like, why do we do it? I think we would probably all agree that gossip generally isn't a helpful thing. It's a hurtful thing. When other people gossip, we don't really like it. We probably feel guilty when we gossip. And being a hurtful thing, there's kind of like, well, what do we get out of it? And what are the reinforcers for it? And also, we're going to look at the response cost, okay? And then we're going to get into conversations for leadership. So, and we got a lot to cover, so I'm going to move really, really quickly and try to make this as relatable as I can. So here's the bottom line of relational frame theory. Words are behavior, okay? We tend to relate to words as things. They're not things. Words are actually behavior, and they frame how we view things. We're not going to get too into the technical terminology, mutual entailment, combinatorial entailment, transformation of stimulus function. We're really going to talk about this generally. By the way, those are the 3 key features. So now you know those. If you're interested in the technicalities, I've got a course to sell you, which I'll tell you about at the end. All right. But what you want to pay attention to, words actually are behavior, and it's a behavior that frames how we view things. Well, what does that mean? So let's look at this. I can put this little symbol in different contexts. Okay, so we've got this. Now, if I say this and give you the context, the letters of math, what are you going to say this is? And you can go ahead and type that in chat. Okay, good. Perfect. Awesome. All right. Now, let's do another one. So if I say this is part of a Sol container, or a piece of a Sol container, what are you going to say this is now? Okay, Sol container was a little too esoteric maybe, or something. Okay, but you got it now. This is great. You're like, what's a Sol container? Well, a Sol container is a body. Okay. But now in the context of body, it's one thing, which we would say fingers or hand, right? Now you got it. Or if I say the letters of math, people got it pretty, I'm having a little weird thing going on with my animations here. Sorry about that. I moved some of them around and apparently didn't test it well enough. Okay. Here's the bottom line, is that in one context, which is the words, by the way, right? We say the letters of math, you relate to it as 2. If I say sign, you relate to it as piece. If I say body part, you relate to it as hand. So, so that's like relational framing, okay? Because we completely changed the way that you look at this thing, based on the context in which we which we provided it. Now, why I used a weird term like the letters of math is because it's likely you haven't heard to numbers referred that way before. Okay, but I said the letters of math. You derived something between math and like how that works, and then letters and how language work, and came up with numbers, and then pretty reliably tons of you were able to say 2. Okay. So that's how language works. It actually shapes the way that you view things like this, and that we do it all the time. Okay, and the point is that, so 2 points I want to make. First, words change the way we look at things, just like the words I put up here changed how you look at this thing. Okay. Words are always changing the way we look at things, and the way we look at things influences our behavior. So the words we use, we could say, actually influence and change our behavior by changing how we look at the world. Another point I want to make is that words acquire functions of their own. So when we say words have meaning, what we mean is that words have a similar effect on our behavior as the actual objects that they represent. Okay. Now, let's keep getting into this and talk a little bit about money, because money's a really good example. So in reality, there actually is no money. There's no money. You got that? You with me? People with your cameras on? Okay, in reality, there's no money. Now, there might be bills in your wallet, and we call those bills money, and you might have numbers in your bank account, and we call those numbers money as well. However, the numbers in your bank account, in reality, are not the same as those things in your wallet. Now, you might call them the same, well, like that thing in the bank account and that thing in my wallet, those are the same thing. But the sameness, and what I really want to point to here, is that the sameness between them is all in your behavior. So if you've ever heard the term arbitrarily applicable, relational responding, this is the arbitrarily applicable part. So in the physical world, there's no relationship between the things in your wallet and the numbers that show up when you log into your bank app on your phone. So in the physical world, there's just no relationship there. So that means the relationship is arbitrary, meaning that it's all based on social agreement. But, and this is what's neat about language, because of that relationship in your behavior, okay, which, well, really, that is your behavior, this imaginary thing that we call money has a powerful influence on how you live your life. So, and Paul, let's pause here for a moment to actually get present to and start looking at like how, like, there's no money in the world. It's all based on social agreement, and it completely runs our lives. You know, every time I go to Costco, there is a line of people who are waiting in line to get gas. Sometimes it like clogs up the parking lot because people are like not just in the space of the Costco gas station, they're like pouring out into the little road that runs around Costco to get gas, and sometimes waiting 20 or 30 minutes to save like 10 cents a gallon on gas. And a lot of the people who are doing this are driving BMWs, they're driving Range Rovers, they're driving Audis. And let's just say that one of those cars holds like 20 or 25 gallons. They're waiting 20 minutes to save $2 or maybe $2.50, which works out to like $6 or $7 an hour. And I promise you, if you're driving an Audi, a BMW, or a Range Rover, your time is worth way more than $7 or $7.50 an hour. And yet here we are, willing to wait 20 or 30 minutes on a Sunday morning to save $7 an hour worth of gas on something that doesn't even exist, except we all agree that money exists and it's one of the most important things in the world. But that's the only place it exists, is in our agreements, you know? And if we honestly look at how we relate to money, it's a marker of our success. It is a marker of our self-worth. And while we all post memes on Facebook and maybe buy coffee cups or bumper stickers, you know, over a field of flowers where it's like, you know, pictures of sunsets and like nothing can make me happy, money has nothing to do with happiness or whatever. If we really look at how we live our lives, we probably all live our lives as though, whoa, excuse me, as though if I could just get enough money and I could just get my money handled and I could get rid of all this debt, then I won't be so worried about money, and then I can be happy. Are you guys tracking with me? Over something that's completely imaginary. All right. And by the way, here's the bad news. While we live life like that, we're never ever going to have enough money. You're never going to get it all handled. You're just not going to have enough. And why you're not ever going to have enough money is because the thing you're trying to get enough of doesn't even exist. You're never going to have enough. You're never going to have enough nothing. Okay. Now, this is not a superfluous point to our discussion of leadership. You know, maybe wondering like, well, what does this have to do? What does this have to do with money? And why are you making me worry about money in this talk about leadership? What's worth noting is that a lot of what we consider to be real and true about the world, such as money, has a real effect on our behavior. You know, we worry about money. We stay up at night about it. We organize our lives around it. It has a real influence on our behavior. So there's that. But the other thing is that what makes money powerful is that we all agree it's real. So the more you and I agree that something is real, it actually, like, it lends power to our behavior of relating. Okay? So it's kind of like we reinforce each other's verbal behavior. So I say, oh, how about money? Isn't money awesome? And you're like, yeah, money's awesome. And we have a whole world all agreeing that this made up thing is real. And then it's functionally, okay, whether it exists in time and space or not, it's functionally real. Functionally in the sense that it impacts our behavior. Okay. Now, what this has to do with gossip is that if you look at a gossip conversation, what tends to happen, especially if you keep having the same ones over and over again, is that one of the outcomes is some sort of agreement about how the world or people in the world are. How the world is or how people in the world are. You get that? So we say things like, Jim's so passive aggressive. And then the people around us agree, and we reinforce each other's view of the world. And then that becomes the world we live in. Okay. Now we're going to skip all the RFT there. We don't need to talk about it. Here's what I want you to take away is your view of the world. Your view of the world is made up of how things look, sound, smell, feel, and taste to you. So when I say view, that's what I'm talking about, really how you experience the world. And your view of the world, and just take my word for it on this, okay, is at least partially, if not mostly, constituted in language. Give me a second here. Okay. The other thing I want to say is that, okay, here we go. I really want to drive this point home. Your words don't reflect your experience of life. They create it or they are it. Now, when I use the term words here, I'm using this term words really loosely. Remember, words are behavior, okay? Now, sorry, I don't know why my slides keep skipping ahead. Okay, so I'm using it very, very broadly. I'm not just talking about the things that we put together. You know, we put together letters to make these sounds or these symbols on paper. What I'm really talking about when I say words, casually use the term word, is the underlying behavior of relating things. So it's the behavior that allows us to relate collections of letters, or to relate to collections of letters as things that I'm really talking about. So bottom line though, the words we use and the relations we derive between things change our view of the world. And again, our view of the world is constituted by how we experience it completely. So while we think our language is, while we tend to relate to language as this tool that we use to describe how the world is, again, our language actually is our experience of the world, or you could say creates our experience of the world. I've got like a few people with their cameras on here. I'm just curious, are you guys tracking with me? Are there any yeah buts, how abouts, what ifs, or I can move on? Okay, cool. All right, good. Thanks, guys. I appreciate the feedback. Okay, cool. So I said I was going to give you a new view of rule-governed behavior, right? All right, here's a cool demonstration. So I'm going to show you this picture of a Tibetan house slipper. All right. So if you've never been to Tibet, in Tibet, this is a traditional Tibetan house slipper. Now, here's the truth. Here's the truth. That is actually not a Tibetan house slipper. What this actually is a picture of a thing that I found, and it was like the closest thing I could find that you might be able to get on your foot when I Googled weird thing a few years ago. Okay. But this is the power of language, okay? And this is just part of the demonstration. I bet, you know, when I do this thing live, this always gets from a laugh from the room, because I say, I know that you're sitting here looking at this thing wondering, how am I going to get that on my foot, right? Like, how does that get on your foot? And everyone laughs, and it's laughter of recognition, because I just created this little trap that made you look at it and start interacting with it as something that goes on your foot, okay? And if you notice, like this thing, who knows, there's like a million potential uses for it. You could, you know, sneeze into it. You could use it as a little parachute for your action figures. You could use it as a diaper. You could deliver a baby in it, okay? Wrap it around your neck, etc. There's a million uses for it. But when I said Tibetan house slipper, all those uses started, like, went away, and you started immediately interacting with it as though it's something that goes on your foot. Okay, here's the interesting thing, by the way. Once you've got it, like, even now that you know it's not a Tibetan house slipper, some of you, myself included, are still looking at, like, how would I get it on my foot, right? And still interacting with it that way. So the definition of rule-governed behavior I'm going to give you, that's a little distinct from what Skinner had to say, is that rule is any word that limits or constrains, word or set of words that limits or constrains how you interact with something. Okay, so Tibetan house slipper is a rule for that. Now, here's the real news. If a rule is any word that limits or constrains how you interact with something, it's all rule-governed behavior. Most of what we do, given that our view of the world is constituted in words, most of our behavior is rule-governed. So we probably don't need the term rule-governed behavior anymore, because there isn't a thing that we look at and interact with that I think isn't touched by language. Now, what I want you to take, bringing this back to leadership and gossip, what I want you to take away from this and note is that when we gossip, we're talking about people, you know, and what they did and why they did it. A lot of it might have the flavor of problem solving, and, you know, what is it about them that has them act this way? And all that figuring out, reporting, describing, etc., is verbal behavior. And whether you experience it that way or not, it shapes your view of whomever you're talking about. So it actually limits and constrains what's possible for you interacting with the people in your life. So just like calling that thing a Tibetan house slipper changes the way you looked at the thing, gossip, the things we say about the people in our life, influences how we interact with them. And again, it may sound like what we're saying is a reflection of how they are, and it's actually a creation. All right, so now we're going to get into who are you, and why we're going to do this is so that we can actually get into the function of gossip and what's it actually for. Because I think once you're actually present to what it's actually for, it won't be so interesting to you. So now, as a human being, by the way, we don't really know who you are. You know, we could say you're your body, but probably most of us don't think of, well, we kind of think like, oh yeah, this is my body. Like, that's not how we relate to ourselves. You know, like we say things, I want to find someone who will love me for me. And we're not talking about someone who's going to love me just for my body. Okay. All right, we're just going to let that go. I've got some animations here that apparently I forgot were on a timer. So you're not your body. And if you're not your body, then who are you? So the question is, well, who are you? The person you talk about when, like, I want someone to love me for me. Who is that person? And I won't waste too much time. Let's just say this. If I told you, go find that person you're talking about and show me where that person is, you wouldn't be able to do it. You just wouldn't be able to do it. Like, you'd say, well, right here. And I'd say, well, that's your body. Are you your body? And say, well, actually, no, I'm not. Okay, well, like, where is that person? That person, you just won't be able to find them. Okay. You'll realize very quickly that, holy moly, you have no idea who you actually are. So let's look at who you are from an RFT perspective. So from an RFT perspective, you've got a perspective, meaning you have a view of the world. And while where you are in the world might change, what stays consistent is the perspective. And wherever the perspective is, despite how what's around the perspective might change, the fact of the matter is the perspective is always right here. Have you ever been anywhere that's not right here? No, you're always right here. Okay. But you've got a perspective, and that perspective moves around in this thing you call your body. And pretty soon into your life, your environment starts training you to call the perspective and the body something. And it starts training you to call that thing I. Okay. Now, what I want you to notice is that sound, I, isn't actually you. I is actually a word that you relate with the perspective and the body. The sound I is actually verbal behavior. It's a relationship between that noise and whatever the perspective, the body, whatever it is. And that's why you can't find yourself when I ask you to go looking for yourself, because the thing that we think that we relate to as a thing isn't actually a thing. It's a verb. It's an action. Okay. So why you can't find you is because you're trying to see the behavior of relating, and the behavior of relating is your view of the world. When you go looking for you, what you're really trying to do is catch yourself in the act of seeing. And that's a really hard thing to do. It's kind of like this, right? Like trying to look at the back of your eyes. So you've been sitting there thinking you're a thing, when in fact, the thing that you call me or I is actually a perspective, and the perspective is made of behavior. Now here's the cool thing about that. Here's the cool thing about that. Being made of behavior, so actually being action or the possibility of action, there's infinite possibility for you and who you actually are. Anything anyone could do is actually possible and available to you right now. There's nothing you can't say, there's nothing you can't hear, there's nothing you can't be with, outside of the constraints of what you say. However, you don't feel like a perspective that's made of possibility for action, and it doesn't feel like who you are as an ongoing dynamic spring of behavior that could flow in any direction at any time. No, you and I mostly feel like, experience life like there's things we can do and there's things we can't do, and the person we are determines what those things are we can and can't do. You know, I think, well, I'm an introvert, so I couldn't go be a leader. Or, you know, I'm really nice, I couldn't send my food back in a restaurant. Or, you tracking with me? Okay, cool. Oh, getting ahead of my slides. But it doesn't feel that way. What it feels like is I'm a thing. It actually feels like I am a thing. And probably if you look at your experience, you experience yourself as having thing-like properties as well, whether you can find that thing or not. Okay. Now, I don't want to get too much into the words about the words about object, the words about the object today. You know, in personality psychology, we would say that the person you think you are is largely concerned with your personality traits. And in other branches of psychology, we might call it your identity. Here we would call it self as content, or your conceptualized self. That's a different webinar. What I will throw in here that isn't so relevant to the current conversation is that you and I do have a ton to say about who we are, what we can do, etc. And if you're interested in exploring your capacity of action and branching out into those things you can't do, you might start exploring the things you say about yourself as things you say about yourself, distinct from who you actually are. Okay. What I do want to dwell on is we move into the function of gossip. So the why of gossip, which in our case deals with the reinforcers that we get out of it, whether it's positive or negative, is that while you actually are behavior, the nature of that behavior actually has you see the perspective as a thing. meaning you relate to the perspective as a thing that's distinct from other perspectives, which also you and I relate to as things. Okay? So bottom line is you and I occur for ourselves while we're behavior, like we're things. And our view of ourselves inside language is that we are things. And while that thingness is actually behavior, inherent in the action of behaving as such is that you and I experience ourselves as things. I know I'm being a little repetitive here, and I really want you to get this. So, as an action, experiencing yourself as a thing, living life, you do other things. And some of those things result in positive reinforcers. Some of them result in negative reinforcers or punishers. And so you're apt to do more of the things that result in things you like, which we call good, and less of the things that you don't like that we call bad. But that isn't it. As you're doing things, living life is a dynamic flow of action, thinking that you're a thing. When you do things that you don't like, a natural action is to relate the action that resulted in something you don't like. Excuse me, when you do things that result in something you don't like, a natural action is to relate the action with yourself. So, we do things that result in bad things, and we look for a reason why it resulted, and we locate the source of that result with ourselves and relate to ourselves in terms of that. And that's where we get that I'm a good person, I'm a bad person, I was right, I was wrong, and we relate to ourselves that way. So, bottom line, when we do things that result in something we don't like that we call bad, we relate to ourselves as bad. And if we do something that results in something good, the natural thing is to relate to ourselves as good. So very quickly, it becomes important for us to do things that will have us think of ourselves as good and avoid doing things that will have us think of ourselves as bad. Tracking with me? Okay. And one more step will be at the function of gossip. So you have a perspective that you call I or me, and the people around you call you. And having a perspective that you call I, and other perspectives around you that call you you, and who you call you or them, it isn't long before you start relating to the other perspectives and being able to engage in the behavior of perspective taking such that you can derive there's things you could do that will have them see you as good or have them see you as bad. And it not only becomes important to relate to yourself as good and not bad, but have other perspectives, meaning other people, see you as good and see you as not bad. You got that? Okay. So here's the function of gossip. As humans, we are designed, as much as hundreds of thousands of years of evolution had any design in mind, is to act to manage people, others' perceptions of us. And most of it has to do with trying to look good and not looking bad. And that's because through our design and the magic of derived relational responding, looking bad, while not a real threat to our existence, actually occurs like a massive, massive threat to our existence. And that's what gossip is for, I assert. When you gossip, at least one of the functions, maybe there's some attention, maybe there's some escape, who knows, okay? But at least some of the function is to look good and avoid looking bad. And whether it actually has that effect on the environment or not, it's the lever we press. We gossip to look good, not look bad. And underlying that, probably a couple different things. Something we did that we're not proud of. Like, look, when you gossip, just start to explore your life. When you gossip, probably behind it is something we did that we're not proud of, or some lack of integrity that would have us then interested in looking good. And again, the function of gossip is to look good, don't look bad. Okay, it's not blowing off steam. It's not trying to figure out how to deal with a situation. It's to be right. And in the process of being right, we make others wrong. Now, it might be a little bit worth it to get a little grossed out by this right now. Okay. Now, not because you've done anything wrong in gossip, or not because you're a gross person or anything else. There's actually no morality in this. Okay. But it might be worth it to get a little grossed out, because it's usually in getting a little grossed out, like, oh my God, like, I'm just gossiping to have myself look good and avoid looking bad. Like, that's it. That's all I get out of it. Ugh. It's usually in the getting grossed out that we actually find the willingness to do something else. Okay. And to actually take meaningful, committed action towards those things which actually matter to us. And I should say, by the way, that all of this is really speculative. Okay. So you may be sitting there like, no, I disagree. I agree. Okay. No, well, this is very speculative. Okay. But it's worth, I encourage you to try it on. Okay. Now, the question is, what's the impact of this? So this is what we get out of it. Now, what's the response cost? And there's a cost to it. Here's the impact. When we gossip, when we talk about other people who aren't around, saying things about them that we wouldn't say when they're around, two things. First of all, we're making the people around us miserable, because we're generally not saying good things. Okay. Now, here's why we're making them miserable. Why we're making ourselves miserable is because we're giving ourselves something to deal with that we don't want to be dealing with. So in the case of gossip, in order to look good and be right, we have to talk about someone who's not there, and that person has to be the bad guy. Okay? And remember, language is creative, and to gossip, in order to look good, we need someone to look bad. And we have to create that person. So we're automatically talking about someone as if they're a bad person, and given the creative nature of language, we now have a bad person in our life. We talk about how awful our boss is. Well, guess what? Now we have to relate to our boss as awful. And now we're stuck with an awful boss. All for pressing the looking good lever. Now, in creating something so we're giving ourselves something to survive, and in creating something to survive, what we have to do all the experience that goes along with surviving something. The people we gossip about, now we have to work ourselves up to go have a conversation with them, or we have to put off or avoid having a conversation with them. We get tense when we walk by their desk, or we look at Thanksgiving or the holiday coming and we're like, oh my God, so-and-so is going to be there. Okay. And then we suffer through dinner with so-and-so. Right. And Or you start to get tired Sunday of your weekend because when you get to work tomorrow, you have a monster to deal with. And here's the thing, it's a monster you created. The monster we have to deal with, it exists in our conversation. Now, that's the impact on you. Now, guess what? While you've been creating a monster, there's an impact on the monster. What do you think it's like? What do you think it's like to live in a world relating to people like you're a monster or a bore or a pain in the ass or however it is that you've been talking about someone, okay? Now, and by the way, don't let yourself off the hook here like they have no idea. Like, oh, they don't have any idea. No, they know. You've been in rooms where you know people were talking about you, okay? And you know, maybe they're not saying it, but you can feel it, okay? There's like something experientially there added to the environment that influences their behavior. So that's the impact. When you gossip and tolerate gossip, you're just living in a world where everyone's surviving something. You know, when like, I know when I go into an organization, people are like, I'm surviving. People are gossiping there, okay? Like they spend a lot of time talking about how my boss is, how this place is, how the leadership is, etc. When people say, I'm surviving, I can guarantee you that's in the background, okay? So what do we do instead? So we gotta move through this a little bit quickly, okay? So here's what you can do, and I invite you to jot some notes in the last few minutes here, okay? Jot some notes. So look at a place where you gossip. You talk to people about how awful this is, how it's never going to change, how this person is that way, etc., and start to investigate what are the things you say to each other and what justifications do you give for the things you say to each other. Justifications meaning I say they're terrible because they always do this or they never do that or they did this to me or well, it's okay we do this because okay. Now, here's the thing, bottom line, remember, language gives us our view of reality. Our view of reality gives us our actions, okay? It's actually really useful to start investigating this. The next thing to actually investigate are what are the actions that follow the rule. And if you look at your behavior, they follow the rule. They follow the rule. You get together with your coworkers and talk about how meetings are a waste of time, and then look how you act in the meetings. Okay, you probably show up late, you probably bring other things to do, you're checked out, you're looking at your phone. The people you've got the conspiracy with, by the way, that's the people you talk about, okay, you conspire with to create these terrible meetings. You guys give each other knowing glances, roll your eyes, okay, and then you get out, and then you talk about how terrible the meeting was, okay. And meanwhile, you're probably not doing things like speaking up, right? Speaking up, bringing your good ideas forth, talking to people who would actually make a difference. Okay, so those are a few, this is like self-assessment, by the way, okay? Now, then you want to get related with the results. Like, what are the results? What are your personal results? I mean, I could tell, we used to gossip about my uncle. The gossip about my uncle was he repeats himself. He's a boring old man. He repeats himself. Okay. And by the way, a conversation with him would go like this. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. He'd start repeating himself. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. then I'd duck out as fast as I could. Like going back to this slide, find someone else to talk to, right? I'd say, and then find someone else to talk to. Now the results, I had an uncle who was disconnected. He would actually wander off. He would wander off at, like, if we were together at a family get together, after about half hour, he'd wander off, find a place by himself to read a book. Meanwhile, the results for the team, if we're talking organizationally here, the team, the company, but what do you get? With my uncle, I mean, it was like a disconnected uncle and a whole bunch of relatives who kind of look at him like, ugh. Now, the results for the team, probably if we go back to the meeting example, it's like not a lot getting done, a frustrated boss, an upset team, that's one of the results. And then however it impacts the company. And then there's the emotional cost, because it has an emotional cost as well. Like there's a general mood or experience that goes along with gossip. In the case of my uncle, it's like, oh, here we go again, right? Here we go again. And then he's lonely. And you want to dig into this, because this, by the way, is where you'll get, like, if you really start to look at what it's like and what it's like and what it's like, it's a drag. And guess what? You're going to die. You're going to die someday. And as long as you're engaged in this gossip conversation, this is what you're doing with your life. And this is how your life is. Okay? Then you want to look at what's the cost on others. You know, what might their experience be given how the group is acting? And what actions might they take given how the group is acting? When you have a boss who's like being really demanding, they don't know what else to do. When you have an uncle who's repeating himself, he doesn't know what else to say. Okay, but the bottom line is to get related with all of the stuff. Okay, now, and I'm just sorry, I'm glancing at the clock. Then there's something missing, and there's something you really care about, or something you're actually really committed to. You could call it a value that, while you've been honoring the gossip conversation, engaging in the conversation, in that conversation, you haven't been honoring what you really care about. It could be like partnership. It could be fun. It could be excitement. It could be cooperation. It could be empowerment. It could be compassion. It could be love. So the place, once you've gotten a little grossed out by like everything you've been doing, saying, your experience, you get the whole world of it, look at what's missing. And then if you were acting 100% consistent with what you actually care about and what really matters to you, and how you're committed to being while delivering what matters to you, what new actions would you take, and what would that make available? Okay, we kind of talked about this. Now, it's going to take willingness. By the way, leadership is risky. You put your neck out there, okay? So the takeaway from this is to actually go have a conversation, to interrupt some gossip. And in a moment, I'm going to give you a basic framework for doing that. But the assignment, the takeaway is have a conversation that interrupts gossip. And by the way, that self-assessment is going to give you what there is to say, but it's going to take willingness. It's going to be a little risky, because people could say, no, what, are you on their side now? Or what, you're the enemy now? Or like, no, I don't see it that way. I think you're wrong. You know, they could say things that for us are going to be tough to hear. It's going to take a little willingness, all right? But the question you got to keep coming back to is, well, like, what, am I willing to keep living this way? And is this conversation worth risking it? Okay. Now, here's the conversation. Here's the basic conversation to have is like, hey, you know, I notice that we say that these meetings are a waste of time, and then we go to meetings and we're not engaged. We don't speak up. We're always checking our email. We're giving each other knowing glances, and then we're stuck with the experience of this as a drag. And not only that, but it's not just a drag while I'm at the meeting. My weekends are a drag because I dread coming to work on Monday. Okay. And I have no idea what it's like for the people running these meetings, but it's got to be awful for them trying to run a meeting with people who are disinterested and disengaged. Now, what I'm actually committed to is partnership, teamwork, a job I love, I'm excited about, and being someone who really contributes. So towards that end, first, I'm not entertaining this conversation anymore. And you're going to see me speaking up in meetings. You're going to see me contributing. You're going to see me asking you what you think in meetings. I'm done checking my email, etc. And I'm going to have this conversation with everyone who goes to these meetings, and we're going to totally transform this culture. Okay, that's leadership. By the way, I got to tell you what I did with my uncle, because this was like the most amazing thing. When I saw like, wow, we actually talk about him. Like, we talk about him. We say he repeats himself and he's boring. And that's the environment he lives in. A whole bunch of people relating to him like he's boring. When I saw that and like, oh my God, it would be the most natural thing in the world if you had something to say and no one was listening to repeat yourself. I had this conversation three times, and the conversation was, I notice we say that. And I wonder if he really has something to say, and that's why he repeats himself. Because the guy I used to know him as wasn't that boring old man. I just said that. I said that three times to I think 5 different people in total. Completely changed my uncle. He died 2 years ago, and no one remembered him that way. No one remembered him that way. Okay. Let's see. That's everything I had. We are way out of time. I have time to hang out. I'm going to put something in the chat because I have a new cohort of my RFT course starting on Monday evening, and there is space available. And if you're available, I would love to have you there. If you've been interested in learning RFT and it seems intimidating to you, like what are all those big words? I promise you, it's a valuable course because you know everything you need to know to learn RFT. You just need a good environment that's going to make it easy. I guess I'll open it. Gloria, you got anything to say?
This is fantastic. I think we've all learned a little bit of, how we're going to transform our language and the way we approach things. There were some questions in the chat, so if you're able to hang out a little bit. So we did have a private question of how is gossip being defined? Kind things can also be said if simply speaking about someone or something without those who are being spoken of being present.
Yeah, here's the bottom line. There's a lot of ways you could define it, right? The easy, quick way is if I would say something about you when you're not around that I wouldn't say when you're around, or would be nervous about saying when you're around, that's gossip, okay? You could look at gossip as anything you would say that would influence how someone relates to someone else in a way that would create them in a negative way, right? And we could get like really behavioral about aversives and appetitives and blah, blah, blah. But I think that's, oh yeah, you can get BCBAC used for the conversational frame theory class. But that's how you define it. What else?
Perfect. We did have another question. Do you think less actual face-to-face time due to social distancing could lessen or would lessen the cost of gossiping?
Nope. Nope. The cost of gossiping is there. Look, we live in as people, I'm not speaking technically here, but we live in a world of make-believe. We really do. And if you look at how language impacts us, it has very little to do with time and space, because we've all had the experience of being with people we know really well and being physically close to them and still feeling utterly alone, right? So our experience of life, like this closeness, has very little to do with time and space, given our capacity for language. Okay, it's something else. So no, I don't think. Now it might. We probably got to go find other opportunities for gossip, right? Like it's not as easy to walk by someone's desk and gossip, but I don't think it limits the impact at all. And I can tell you, like being involved in different communities, right? Like there's communities I'm involved with that don't tolerate gossip at all, right? Like there's no toleration for gossip. In those environments where we've all been meeting online, there's like a liveliness to getting together with those people. And then there's groups that I've been a part of that gossip a lot. And it's very clear, like, oh, there's like people really gossip here. And I mean, you can feel it through Zoom, just like I'm going to call it like the experience of deadness that goes along with it.
Awesome. I think that was all the questions that everyone had. I also want to just throw out, I took the conversational frame theory course and it was just mind-blowing and eye-opening. I went in with like no RFT experience. And hopefully I came out of it, I'm able to explain it to other people. Dr. Herbst also has like hand motions and gestures if you're like a visual learner. So, if you have the time, it starts Monday. I highly, highly 100% recommend that course if you get a chance. So I will link that in the email that I send out that will have the CEU certificate survey. So fill that out, sign up for the class, and let us know if you have any feedback. Dr. Herbst, anything else from you?
I mean, does anyone else have anything they want to talk about? Yeah, buts, how abouts, what ifs?
If you do, you can come off mute as well. I'd love to hear your voices.
Do you have any questions, Gloria?
I do not. I do need to reflect, though. I need to reflect on my interactions with coworkers and just people, even like you mentioned your uncle, like my family members, because I think my family gossips a little bit.
Oh, families are the worst. But here's the thing. When you get, it's funny, my uncle changed. And it was like nothing to do with him. It was actually just changing like the dialogue around him. Because he stopped repeating himself. And I have like a little data for this, right? What I mean by zero tolerance is we just don't do it, and we agree we don't do it, and we manage ourselves not to do it. So it's not like there's real punitive consequences in place. It really is just like we have an agreement that we don't gossip, that if we have something to say to someone, we take it to the person who can make a difference. Okay? So it's not even necessarily extinction. It's more like prompting, where it's like, if Gloria and I were gossiping, Okay, because it does happen where we gossip, but at some point one of us would say, hey, this is gossip. I actually need to take it to, that person. Or Gloria might say, hey, Scott, have you talked to so-and-so about this? Okay, you start there. So it's kind of self-policing, right? And by the way, if you're ever in an environment like that, it's freaking extraordinary. It's awesome. It's like, it's just, you can feel it in the air. Kind of like you get on a city bus and you can feel the mood of the bus. Like this would be like the opposite of that. How do you eliminate the she said, she said? Yeah, I don't know that you eliminate it. I think you might just get better and better at managing it. And oh, I do have another course, by the way. It's called Supervising Dynamically. I don't have the next cohort for that open yet, though.
I will be there, Dr. Herbst. Just let me know when that one's going to get started, and hopefully see everyone else there. Does anyone else have any questions? We are a little bit over time, so I know y'all want to get on with your Saturdays and enjoy the weekend. Anything else before I close out the room?
Cool. Thank you guys for being here. I really I love presenting. So
Thank you.
Thanks for giving me an opportunity to do one of my favorite things.
Mm-hmm.
All right, take care, everyone. Don't forget to fill out the CU survey. Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.